Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodius. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodius, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodius killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodius would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodius is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodius for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abasthibu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abasthibu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell too. See, Abasthibu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abasthibu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abasthibu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abasthibu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abasthibu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abasthibu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey, do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebub. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him. Coming in at number 5, we've got Asteroth. You feeling lazy lately? After a good year or so indoors, followed by some intense socialization, you probably feel like it's time to hibernate again. Fall is rapidly approaching, and with it the desire to drink hot tea and never leave the house. There are horror movies to be watched and fall recipes to be cooked, but be careful. If you use all of this as an excuse, you might be under the influence of Asteroth. Riding around on the back of a dragon and carrying a staff that sort of looks like a snake, this dude is all about laziness. Asteroth's whole deal is tempting mortals into being lazy. Once he gets them there, it's so much easier to manipulate them into bad behavior. More souls for hell, more blood for the blood god, and all that good stuff. Sounds like fun, right? That's not all he does though, although that is a pretty rough task. People are naturally inclined to laziness anyway, so being tempted into that kind of thing is the worst. In addition to that though, he's also the treasurer of hell, and helps the new demons get a hang of things when they first show up, showing them the super hot ropes and whatnot. Interesting that hell has a currency that they needed organized, eh? I'm sure he does plenty of laundering across all sorts of seedy underworld activities. Interestingly enough, witches see Asteroth a little differently. They consider him a female demon with expertise in all sorts of areas, more specifically, lust, protection, and love. So Asteroth can be many things, but one thing is for sure, and that is Asteroth's terrible breath. That's a fun little demonic detail. In Christian lore, it appears that Asteroth also has dominion over math, and can make people invisible in their search for treasure, so Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones may have something to talk to this demon about. And like most demons of higher orders, Asteroth can answer any questions asked as long as they fall under the topics he knows about. Coming in at number 4, we've got Olivier. A real jerk, this one. We can see this playing out across all cultures and eras, and it's always justified by some ridiculous standard. Cruelty and hatred towards the poor and disenfranchised. More than ever, the line between stable and in the street is thin and blurry, and Olivier takes full advantage of this. I'm sure all sorts of entrepreneurs, influencers, and money hoarders have been visited by this demon. Olivier, baby, the so-called prince of archangels down in the depths, and patron demon of encouraging malice and viciousness towards the poor. That is indeed a low, low demon to be. We live in a messed up world already. Why should the poor be reviled for simply being poor? At what point do we decide that work is the ultimate good and that nothing else can stand in for that morally or economically? It seems as though the folks who do the most important, most real work, say building the structures that we inhabit or bringing food to the masses, get the short end of the stick. And Olivier apparently has a fair share in keeping that the way things are. Middle managers and corporate drones keep their specific machines chugging and then dump on the poor, telling them that they should simply work harder. Forget Asteroth making folks lazy. Making folks think that others are lazy for not making as much money as them is really wild. Olivier, you really are a rat, aren't you? Coming in number 3, we've got Adramelech. So we talked about Beelzebub last time and his tendency to bring about terrible things. There's plenty of responsibility that comes with being Lord of the Flies, and he's gotta have some help from time to time. Unfortunately, there aren't any temp agencies or internship programs in hell. Most folks are just destined to do their jobs and do them for all of time. This is where Adramelech comes in. This demon does his best to give Beelzebub a hand by assisting the Lord of the Flies as a great minister and chancellor, a lofty title for such an interesting demon. On top of being this assistant in Hell's hierarchy, Adramelech was also known for being a sun god who demanded human sacrifice. So even before being adopted by those beneath the surface, he was causing trouble. I wonder how many humans were dropped in his name. And I wonder how many of them ended up in Hell, possibly even under his command. Makes you think now, doesn't it? There might be a moon god brother out there demanding similar bloodshed, but I can't make any guarantees. Lastly, before I go, I'll bring up a point I mentioned in another video. Adramelech has quite the eye for fashion and quite possibly a taste for Prada. You see, the devil relies upon this particular demon for all of his wardrobe needs. That's right, Adramelech is in charge of the clothes the devil wears. You'd think that down in hell it wouldn't matter all that much, but vanity is a sin, so that fits right in. Coming in number 2, we've got Varine. Oh, this is a nasty one. Patience is a virtue indeed, and it is so easy to lose it. Plus, once patience is off the table, everything just gets so much worse. Sure, some can sit back, relax, and wait, but there are so many forces acting against you at all times. Who wants to wait, right? Especially in this era of constant and instant gratification. Why sit quietly and be ready for whatever when you can do a nosedive into your phone and drown in all of the readily available content? Hell, I bet a lot of you folks watching right now should be doing something else, or at least preparing to do something. Varine is the demon of impatience and loves to push humans towards acting impatiently. He does it without delay too, no waiting in line, no queuing up, no sitting about until something good happens. So all the folks in your life who seem to act impatiently are probably being influenced by this demon. The dude in the beat up Corolla who doesn't seem to know what a zipper merge is and decides to rush all the way to the end of the disappearing lane to just nose his way in? Varine. The lady at the supermarket who absolutely can't believe all of these selfish people with full carts in front of her line unbelievable despite her equally full cart. Varine. Those folks who pre-order every gosh darn pop culture artifact they think is cool and then whine until it finally arrives in the mail. Varine. Impatience will end us all, especially if we give into it. Most things will come with time, but if you try too hard to speed up the process, you're just asking for heightened blood pressure and a desire to lash out at all those around you. And that's no fun. Some actually describe Varine as a female demon too, so if you subscribe to that belief, ignore what I said before while referring to this entity as male. Interestingly enough, this impatient demon is mostly aligned with creation rather than destruction, which is a strange thing for a demon to do, but hey, I'm not going to claim to understand the whims and goals of each and every underworld entity. One last little tidbit before we move on to our final demon of the day, Varine was supposedly involved in a pretty large-scale possession way back in the 17th century. Yep, it possessed a whole swath of nuns, which had plenty of implications for the church and those who followed it. Fun, right? And finally, at number 1, we've got Louvart. Supposedly the only fallen angel amidst the demonic hierarchy, Louvart is often referred to as the Prince of Angels. High praise for someone so low. This demon is many things, but one that appears quite often is the idea that he presides over possessions. Louvart was even blamed for the possession of Sister Madeleine during the demonic attacks in 17th century France. A round of applause for Louvart, everyone. Jolly good show. Most would think that they'd be safe seeking refuge within the holiest of holy books, but apparently there are plenty of demons.
In at number 5, Nadab and Abihu burned alive. Nadab and Abihu were brothers chosen to serve the Lord as priests due to their family having a rich pedigree. Their intensive preparation and dedication to serving God. However, when they chose to make an offering to the Lord, they did not know it would be their last. They dressed in their best robes and made their way to the altar to make an offering of incense. It was a known fact that they were forbidden forbidden to make unauthorized offerings to the Lord, and it is unknown why they ignored this warning. Once their offering was made, a flame engulfed the altar, and the brothers onlookers watched as they were burned alive. It is said that these deaths were to show the people that there are no sins too small. The brothers should have known that the incense was an unauthorized gift. Something to keep in mind next time you light some incense in your home. Which I never do, so I'm fine. No one's burning me alive, motherfuckers. Coming in at number 4, John the Baptist is beheaded. Now this one starts with some Kardashian-style family drama. John the Baptist had been imprisoned by Herod the Tetrarch for commenting that it was not right that Herod had divorced his wife Basilis, so that he may take his brother's wife Herodias instead. John commented that it is not lawful for you to have her, which seems like a nice way of putting it. Herod has John imprisoned and was planning on keeping him there. The people saw John as a prophet, and Herod didn't want to cause any upset. For his birthday he had a gathering where Herodias' daughters danced for all of the guests. This pleased him and his guests so much he made an oath to grant her anything she wanted. Prompted by her mother, she asked, "Bring me John the Baptist's head on a platter." Herod was disturbed by this, but he had to keep his oath. That evening John the Baptist was beheaded in his cell. His head then brought on a platter to be presented to Herodias and her daughter in front of all of their guests. It is unclear what happened to the head after this, but that is some crazy revenge for gossiping about the family. That's why you should never gossip. Someone might cut out your tongue. In at number 3 we have King Herod eaten alive. Here is another example of someone upsetting God and paying the ultimate price. King Herod, a different Herod from the last story, was giving a speech to his people as he usually does. On this day, however, while he was speaking, someone cried out, "The voice of God and not of a mortal." He did not refute the claim that he was a god, and it is said that he was instantly struck down by an angel. Angels are savage. We've learnt this on this channel. They're evil. The story goes on that he did not have a quick death. He was in agonizing pain for at least 7 days. It's like it took God 7 days to build the world. Wow. 7's a good number. Like David Beckham. He was number 7. Not that I believe in God, you know. I don't believe in anything. During this time, it is said he was being eaten alive by worms from the inside out. The worms consumed him after 7 days, and this was his slow, painful cause of death. Imagine a worm consuming you. Worms are evil because you can cut them in half, and then they are 2 worms. That's you just created 2 different things. 2 worms. When 2 become 1. When 1 becomes 2. Like, what the that shouldn't be right. Like, you should never be able to cut something in half and then it becomes 2 living things. Anyway, that's and it's worse than The Conjuring. In at number 2 we have Concubine of a Levite. This story is about a Levite who was traveling with his concubine, a second-class wife. Sucks. Imagine being the second-class wife. I only want to be first class. Along his travels, he finds an elderly man who offers to give them shelter for the night in the town of Gibeah. It is a dangerous place no one should be traveling through. Some dangerous men show up at the house looking to have a good time. The Levite and old man decide to offer up the concubine to appease the men, hoping this will keep them safe from the men. The concubine is taken away by the men for the rest of the night. In the morning, the Levite finds the concubine dead outside of where he had been staying. The man is angry for what they've done to her, so he decides to get revenge on the men, so he dices them up. He then sends those pieces to 12 tribes surrounding Gibeah, which leads them to attack the city. Dicing your girlfriend up to get revenge on her murderers doesn't seem like the best idea, but then again he did offer her up to them in the first place. So, you're in the wrong. You should be in The Conjuring, and I'll possess you. And finally, in at number 1 we have Ezekiel's Army of the Dead. This next one might remind you more of The Walking Dead than a Bible story. Ezekiel was brought by God to a valley that was full of bones. He walked back and forth among the bones until God asked him if these bones could once again live. God then told him to repeat a prophecy to the bones as he told him it. The bones started to move from around him. They began to form and find the other pieces of the body they had lost. Tendons and flesh appeared on them and skin covered them, but they were not breathing, they were not alive. He then told him the final words to speak, and the dead began to wake up and breathe once more. God told him that these are the people of Israel who had been killed. He was bringing them back to take their rightful place back in their land. Ezekiel then had a full undead army to take back their land which they had lost.